It took them a while, but Newcastle broke their long-standing transfer record twice in 2019. The Mike Ashley era has been a prolific one for Newcastle signings, so let's rate the last 25 players to join the Magpies out of 10. Modi Army 8 out of 10. We start in the summer of 2016 as Newcastle were preparing for an immediate return to the Premier League from the Championship. Rafa Benitez brought in Modi Army as his Moussa Sissoko replacement, but it's fair to say it took a while for Mo to make the difference. It was only in the Premier League where he really impressed, going from a woeful attacking midfielder to an unstoppable defensive midfielder, capable of tackling anyone and anywhere at any time. He was a strong player for the Magpies, but left this summer on a free. DEANDRE YEDLIN 7 out of 10. Signed from Spurs for about £5 million, DEANDRE YEDLIN's been solid if not spectacular in black and white. His pace is sublime and a real outlet, but he can often leave a lot to be desired at the back, as we all saw against Aston Villa the other week. But for £5 million you can't really ask for much more from the American. DARYL Murphy 4.5 out of 10. Signed to add extra depth and experience to Rafa Benitez's forward line, DARYL Murphy was a real surprise signing at St James's Park, especially considering the fact he played for Sunderland and was in his 30s. But the Irishman did well when he played, ending the year with a goal every 3 games. Sadly, he was only brought in for the Championship and sent on his way following promotion back to the top flight. Akraf Lazar 1 out of 10. This guy has to go down as one of Newcastle's worst signings of the decade and a player who's remarkably still at St James's Park. The Moroccan was brought in to add depth at left back, even getting the number 7 shirt, but he never performed in the North East. The Championship was too much for him, so he had no chance in the Premier League. Lazar is now on a loan spell in the second tier of Italian football, his third temporary spell away from Newcastle, where his contract still runs until 2021. Christian Atsu 5.5 out of 10. The Ghanaian arrived on loan in the Championship and scored some key goals, including a couple of brilliant strikes against the likes of Bristol City and Cardiff. His form earned him a permanent move to Newcastle, and Atsu has been okay in the Premier League, despite lacking that bit extra quality you need in the top flight. When he's in form he's been good for Newcastle, but those days have been few and far between. Florian Lejeune 8.5 out of 10. With Newcastle back in the Premier League in 2017, they added some extra quality at the back with French centre-half Florian Lejeune from Eibar. He endured a slow start but soon got to grips with the Premier League, becoming an integral player alongside captain Jamal Lascelles. He was brilliant last season too as part of Rafa's back 3, but 2 horrible knee injuries have limited his minutes on the pitch. Regardless, he's a top player for Newcastle and an excellent signing. Jacob Murphy 1 out of 10. The twin of Josh Murphy, Jacob cost Newcastle £12.5 million and what a waste of money it was. The winger never looked equipped for the Premier League, netting just once in black and white as well as getting a pair of assists. But on the whole he's been poor and a real bad bit of business from the Benitez era. He's on loan in the Championship now with Sheffield Wednesday, destined to never make the grade at Newcastle in the Premier League. Javier MANQUILLO 6 out of 10. Signed from Atletico Madrid on the back of relegation with Sunderland, Javier MANQUILLO hardly excited the Toon with his arrival. And after a slow start to life in black and white, the Spaniard did eventually show his worth, doing an admirable job on both the left and the right side of defence. He's been solid a lot of the time for Newcastle, even if he's far from the perfect defender. If he was that good, Atletico wouldn't have let him go. JOSELU 3 out of 10. For £5 million, Newcastle can't really have expected much from JOSELU, even if he did score in his home debut against West Ham. The big Hoss often frustrated Toon fans with big misses and failed passes, filling the raft of supporters pretty much every time he stepped onto the pitch. The goals didn't flow, and JOSELU was rightly sold this summer to Alaves, where he's actually doing much better. MIKEL MERINO 6.5 out of 10. This is a story of what might have been. Relatively unknown when he arrived from Dortmund, MERINO immediately proved he was a class act on a football pitch, with glorious balance and passing range making him a future Newcastle star. However, a badly timed back injury pretty much ended his Newcastle career. While he was out, Modi Army and Jonjo Shelvey stepped up, and MERINO was out of favour, which led to him asking to leave. Real Sociedad swept in, and MERINO's time in Newcastle was over after a year. How sad. KENEDY 5 out of 10. The Brazilian had 2 loan spells at Newcastle and they were both very different. The first started in January 2018 and he dazzled at St James's Park. Kenny added flair and creativity to a side that desperately needed it, and he left in the summer with fans panning for his return. Return he did, but as a completely different player. Kennedy's second loan spell was awful, which eventually led to him losing his place in the starting 11. It's fair to say he wasn't asked back for a third spell. Islam Slimani, 2 out of 10. Another January loan signing, Slimani was meant to add goals to Newcastle's attack, but he failed to find the net at all. He spent most of his time either injured or suspended, with his best moment coming in a 2-1 win over Arsenal, where he set up Matt Ritchie's winner. Sadly, that was as good as it got for the Algerian forward in a Toon shirt. Martin Dubravka, 9.5 out of 10. From an incredible debut against Manchester United becoming Newcastle's number 1, what a signing Martin Dubravka's been. The Slovakian was pretty unknown when he first arrived on loan, but he quickly made the headlines with a career-defining clean sheet against the Red Devils. Dubravka would have a permanent move for about £4 million, and he's been worth every single penny. He's a fan favourite, a goalkeeper who's capable of moments of brilliance and match-winning saves. KISUNG, 4 out of 10. Signed on a free from Swansea City, KISUNG has never really been a star at Newcastle, despite a strong spell in the side not long after joining in the autumn of 2018. K has barely played under Steve Bruce, and when he has, he's looked slow and off the pace, with the speed of the Premier League passing him by. He was a cheap option to beef up the squad, but one who's not really good enough. FABIAN SCHAR, 9.5 out of 10. Alongside Martin Dubravka, FABIAN SCHAR is one of Newcastle's best signings in recent years. The Swiss defender cost only £3 million thanks to a release clause in his contract, and he's now worth closer to £50 million. He's a fan favourite because of his sublime long passing and marauding runs from the back, but he's also a solid defender. With some stunning goals along the way, he's very much a modern day Philippe Albert for the Magpies. Yoshinori Muto, 1 out of 10. The Japanese forward came in to replace Dwight Gale when he joined West Brom on loan last season, but it's fair to say that Muto didn't live up to the hype. The speedster has just one Premier League goal for Newcastle, and nowadays he can't even get on the bench. Chances have been limited for Muto, but the ones he's got he hasn't taken, and he's proven to be an absolute waste of money. SALOMON Rondon, 9 out of 10. Brought in on loan last season and given the number 9 shirt, SALOMON Rondon was a key reason why Newcastle survived last season. He scored 11 league goals for the Magpies, his best ever Premier League tally, but he brought much more than goals to St James's Park. He was the focal point, the defensive forward perfect for Rafa Benitez's system, but sadly he didn't make his move permanent over the summer, instead following Rafa Adel Yifang in the Chinese Super League. Federico Fernandez, 7.5 out of 10. The Argentinian arrived from Swansea to add defensive cover in the summer of 2018, and it's fair to say that Fernandez has been reliable for the Magpies when called upon. While he isn't as flash as Shaw or as inspirational as Lascelles, Fernandez has been an extra leader at the back for Newcastle, rarely putting a foot wrong. He even got his first Toon goal earlier in the season, a lovely header against a desperate West Ham side. Antonio Barreca, 0.5 out of 10. What a waste of time this was. The Italian arrived on loan in January 2019, but he managed just one substitute appearance. Barreca was barely seen on Tyneside, so it's hard to even judge him properly. But considering he wasn't good enough to replace on the bench most weeks, I think that tells the whole story. Miguel Almiron, 6 out of 10. A £21 million signing from Atlanta United, Miguel Almiron became Newcastle's most expensive signing ever in January, taking the record away from MIKEL. And Almiron immediately showed why he cost so much money, giving Newcastle a new dimension going forwards. However, things haven't been as promising for him this season. Almiron is often flattered to deceive, with a lack of composure and confidence in the final third souring his first 12 months in England. JOELINTON, 3 out of 10. Newcastle broke the transfer record again in the summer, signing JOELINTON for £40 million. But why? The Brazilian has been pretty woeful since arriving, and it's not as if he was prolific in Germany either. The first time Newcastle spent ridiculous money on a player, and it's this guy. There's obviously a lot of time for him to turn it around, but it's been a bad first impression from JOELINTON. JETRO WILLEMS, 8 out of 10. The Dutch defender is on loan from Frankfurt and absolutely loves a goal against the big boys, scoring 2 crackers with his weaker foot against Liverpool and Man City. Willems has been a great acquisition on loan, and a lot of Toon fans will want to see his loan move made into a permanent one, such has been his impact at St James's Park. Alan Saint-Maximin, 7.5 out of 10. The French sensation who said the F word live on local radio at 6:10 in the evening, Alan Saint-Maximin is already a fan favourite at St James's Park. There's no one he can't dribble past, even on the length of the pitch. It seems that the only thing that can stop him is himself. The end product needs a little work, but that's to be expected. If he was good to finish with his years as a dribbler, he would play for a much bigger club than Newcastle. Emil Kraft, 2.5 out of 10. The defender joined to add depth to Newcastle's squad, but to be honest he doesn't look anything better than they've already got, so really what was the point? Kraft has been a massive disappointment so far for Newcastle, and he's probably third choice, which isn't what you want when you've only just arrived. And finally, Andy Carroll 5 out of 10. The local hero returned home this summer, with Newcastle the only Premier League club willing to take a punt on the big man. The fans still adore Carroll, and the ovation he got in his second debut against Brighton was something special. But we had to really see Carroll at his best, spending most of his time either on the bench or defending. He's a sentimental sign that Newcastle are yet to get any return on, and a lot of people doubt if he can really still do it at the highest level. So that's Newcastle's last 25 signings rated out of 10. Let us know your ratings in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like, share and subscribe.